So I want to welcome everybody. My name is Lauren, and I will be facilitating the session tonight. It's great to see so many participants. We are certainly meeting differently than we would have over a year ago. I want to thank all of you for your willingness and patience to meet online. Hopefully all of you have read the participant register preparation package, but even being as prepared as possible as we're seeing now, technology can be a bit trying. We will do our best to adapt how needed and in the moment. Before I introduce the presenters, I want to take care of a little housekeeping. As you are already aware, you're muted. Due to the number of participants tonight, we ask that you provide your questions and comments through the chat function, which you've all found now. It's the little icon at the top with the bubble with the fake words. If you just press onto that, you'll be able to follow the chat and then be able to type in a new message at the bottom. After presentation, your questions will be passed on to the mayors and CAOs during the Q&A. However, most likely not all questions will be able to be directly addressed, but we will theme questions where it makes sense. If your question is not raised tonight, it will still be captured in something we call the What We Heard report. This report will include all comments and questions leading up to and including both sessions of this first public event. What We Heard reports will be posted publicly online and circulated to the working subcommittees and the Joint Friendship Agreement Committee that includes all members of both council for their review. And I should note here, responses to questions will be provided through the website or email as information becomes available. This meeting will be recorded for two purposes. The presentation by the mayors will be posted to the website for those community members that were not able to attend tonight's session. We will also use the recording to ensure we capture the session's activity for the What We Heard report. The Q&A portion of the recording will not be publicly shared and will be deleted once the report is complete. If you prefer, please turn off your video and rename yourself to something you feel comfortable with. It's really whatever your comfort level is. If the meeting is significantly disrupted for any reason, a new link will be distributed to all participants within minutes of disconnection. For whatever reason, you'll get a new link and we can hop back on. And finally, as this is a joint town event, please keep the language used in the chat respectful and provide opportunity for all participants to add their questions and comments without judgment. We want to hear from as many participants as possible. I also want to touch on the objective of this particular meeting before we start. We are early in the amalgamation review process. This is the kickoff meeting to overview amalgamation, background, and the review negotiation process moving forward. Most background and process questions should be able to be addressed tonight. There will also be updates on the few topics that decisions have been made to date. However, many more specific questions around the impact of amalgamation do not yet have responses or answers. The towns are currently in the process of gathering information and data that will be thoroughly reviewed once available. This information will also be shared with the public. For example, just one question we've seen a few times in the emailed questions through the website is a result of amalgamation, how much tax savings will result for the average household. I've also saw just today how much tax increase will result as of the amalgamation. This is not known yet, but please still provide all of these questions here and continue to do so through email, as the towns also want to understand the questions you want to see answers and responses to throughout the process. So quickly, I'd like to introduce the presenters tonight. We have the Mayor of Black Diamond, Ruth Goodwin, and the Mayor of Turner Valley, Barry Crane. In support of potential questions, both CAOs are present. Well, to clarify for Turner Valley, we have Heather Thomas, the Manager of Legislative Services, who's been sitting as the acting CAO until very recently, with the vacancy just filled. And the CAO of Black Diamond, Charlene Brown. As I mentioned, I'm Lauren, part of the support team for the amalgamation review process, and my colleague Stephanie, you've also heard her voice, will be supporting the Q&A part of tonight's questions. And we'll just change the slide, please. In the presentation tonight, we'll cover amalgamation process and timeline, progress to date, and then provide opportunity for your questions, followed up by process next steps. Slide, please. While the presentation is in progress, please feel free to provide your input on these specific questions at any point. I'll circle back to them just to make sure you've had ample opportunity to provide your thoughts, but what is your greatest concern around amalgamation? What's your greatest hope with amalgamation? And really want to focus on what you want to know more about through this amalgamation process. We've gotten a lot of specific questions that can't yet be answered, but they will be. And so what's important to you to make sure is reviewed through this process? Okay, let's get started. So Barry and Ruth, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that introduction and laying the ground rules, Lauren and Stephanie. Welcome everyone to the open house portion of our process. I'm going to give you a quick run of the first 6-7 slides, and then I'm going to hand it off to Mayor Ruth. So I'm going to get started right here with a little background information for you. So, of course, amalgamation has been a topic of discussion for Black Diamond and Turner Valley for over 30 years. It's the joining of two communities. It's as simple as that. It's the streamlining of the processes that run these communities. We have had studies going back, as you can see, from 1988 to 91, 2005, and 2017 was our most recent. Now, the towns have dedicated money to these studies in the past, but the 2017 document really was born out of the 2013 flood. And the 2013 flood, as we all know, took out and wiped out 2 bridges in town and the water treatment plant in Black Diamond. And the struggles that ensued after that really intimately tied the communities together through the water servicing. And it really pointed out that the increased collaboration that we have as 2 communities is one community. And the 2017 document speaks to that. So the history of amalgamation goes back many years. Councils of the past have looked at the validity of it, and today in 2021, we're here to address it again. So that shows how collaboration is so important to municipal government for small towns. Next slide, please. So in September of 2020, the towns formally notified the province that they had the intent to enter negotiations in good faith and look at the real true potentials to move forward. The amalgamation process involves through the friendship agreement, which was formed in 2012, and then grew into what we now have as the Joint Friendship Agreement Committee. That committee is all 14 members of Turner Valley and Black Diamond, and we sit and we review all the information, all the data that we can collect and bring to the meetings for debate and decisions. In this particular setup where we're talking about amalgamation, we have criteria that we have to follow. Right now, of course, as you can see in the 3rd bullet, we're at the public involvement stage in the process. And as much as we'd love to be in the Flair and Derrick and had some coffee and donuts prior to this, we can't be doing it face-to-face for now. So we're quite happy to be doing it through Zoom, and we're glad you can attend. The final decision, and this is very important because there's a lot of people who want this question answered right away, and the final decision on whether or not to proceed rests with the outcomes of all of this information that we have gathered and that we are presently gathering and will continue to gather. So it's not a done deal. We are in the process of investigating and negotiating. That's very important that we all understand that. Next slide, please. So why amalgamation? Obviously, this is an easy question that everyone will pop up from time to time, but there's many reasons. The history of collaboration, as I pointed out earlier, is of paramount importance. The efficiencies that we're looking for, the building of one sustainable community, one council and one voice will have a very strong seat at the table when talking and dealing with the province. We want to maximize our provincial and federal funding. And of course, we really want to strengthen our area's economic development. And I think you've seen that in the last year and a half. Our Intermunicipal Economic Development Committee has made great strides using the local business owners as the catalyst to run forward and really advertise and promote our area. Next slide. So Black Diamond and Turner Valley, with the intent to amalgamate, have begun the process to closely examine the impacts of potentially amalgamating the towns. Next slide. And this is how we kind of view it through the eyes of our JFAC, which is our Joint Friendship Agreement Committee. We are looking at goals and our shared objectives. So balancing service levels for long-term costs, joint decision-making that is effective, it's adaptive, and based on honesty and integrity. Those are very paramount. Developing and implementing policies that are fact-based, action-focused, and achievable within a realistic and feasible time frame. Now, that's a lot of smart words to be coming out of my face, which a lot of people would say, you know, no good, but it's good. It's totally fine. Diversified and resilient economies. That's exactly what I was saying earlier about economies of scale and how we push forward into the new economy. Integrated policy framework, sustainable delivery service, expanded community capacity, and we really want to have a responsive local governance model. And of course, that's the people who get to choose the elected officials they want, and you can remove us or you can keep us. We're working ourselves out of a job, I guess. Next slide, please. So the data and the analysis and the collection of that data is part of the subcommittee's work. So this is a very straightforward one. We have 4 committees: the finance, the public and stakeholder consultation, the emergency services, which is of course paramount, and the procedural committee. So how we've been working is the committees are tasked with collecting, debating, deciphering, and filtering the information, and through the committees bring it back to the JFAC, which is the bigger Joint Friendship Agreement Committee, and from there decisions are debated and pushed forward. Pretty much as simple as that. Next slide. Now, this one I'm not going to waste too much time on. I'm just going to list them out and you can read them along with me. Mayor Ruth is going to speak to these in a few slides. But through amalgamation negotiations, we have mandatory items and transitionary items. So mandatory items are listed 1 to 9, municipal name, municipal boundaries, municipal status, electoral wards, council representation, location of municipal office, proposed incorporation date, and annexation of land to achieve continuous border. Other matters would fall into transitionary items, which we'll see here next. Next slide, please. So transitionary topics are interim council, interim chief CAO, first election, 2021 general municipal election, appointments of returning officers. I know this is fast, but Mayor Ruth is going to talk to these. Compensation of other municipal authorities, transitionary finances, interim tax treatment general, authority to impose additional tax, assessment matters, employee and labor negotiations, which of course is HR related, bylaws and resolutions of existing municipalities, continuation of emergency services, which again is very important, library services, ICF extensions, utilities, and the West End Regional Sewage Services Commission. So all those transitionary items get dealt with as the process moves along. So they won't be things that happen right away, but they are important as the process moves along. Our goal is to answer all the municipal or mandatory items first and then flow through with what we can achieve. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Mayor Ruth, and thank you very much for attending. We look forward to your questions coming up.
Thank you very much, Mayor Crane. An integral part of the application to amalgamate include public and stakeholder input. We have created events and activities in order to gain your input, providing us with the information that you need in order to form your opinion, why we should or why we should not amalgamate. We have an activity coming up in April to discuss and to have your input with regards to electoral wards, also the name of the new municipality. We have already begun our stakeholder formal request for feedback, and ongoing public questions and input can be submitted by email, phone, or letter. Event number 2, which will be occurring in June, we will be taking all of our input, collecting it. It will be themed and reported in quantitative metrics. The feedback will continue to be provided to the subcommittee and JFAC for consideration. The reporting and updates will continue to be updated and posted to our websites. After today's presentation, we will include a 1-week window for you to continue to include your input, questions, and material that you would like responded to. Next slide, please. The process in finalizing the application, JFAC makes decisions on all of the mandatory and transitional topics. We decide what's included in the amalgamation application and if it's completed in the end. And then JFAC decides if the amalgamation application proceeds. Each council will consider supporting the application, and if supported, the application will be submitted to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Next slide, please. This is a timeline, and it provides a snapshot of the past, the present, and the future of this process. Beginning in September of 2020, in which we provided the letter of intent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs that we were beginning our negotiation process. Throughout the last couple of months, the negotiation and engagement planning has occurred, beginning with the engagement and kickoff and our input and requesting that input from our public as well as our stakeholders. Next slide, please. Timeline continued. Otherwise, subcommittees, review, and recommendations will continue. Our subcommittees, including Finance, Emergency Services, Public Stakeholder Consultation, and Procedure subcommittees. Anticipating the submission of the amalgamation application to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, we are looking at September of 2021. In September, JFAC and councils will decide if this application is complete and ready for submission. If so, it will be submitted to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Next slide, please. To date, the decisions made by JFAC, both mandatory and transitional matters, include the municipal status, which is a town, an incorporation date of January 1st, 2023, the elected officials representation, which is comprised of 6 council members and 1 mayor, a contiguous border, which we now have after the town of Black Diamond annexed 5 quarter sections. The municipal offices, we have decided, will maintain and be active throughout this time of amalgamation and transition. The main town office will be in the current Black Diamond Municipal Office building at 301 Center Avenue. Next slide, please. The bylaws and resolutions, no updates to bylaws and resolutions at this time, but JFAC has directed administration to inventory the bylaws and the resolutions and determine priorities. This is for the alignment during the pre-amalgamation timeframe. We have requested a first election in Q4 of 2022 for the new council of the new municipality. The interim council then will not be required if the election is held in Q4 of 2022. The council elected in October of 2021 will terminate on December 31st of 2022. The intermunicipal collaborative framework extension. Both towns have received the extension from the province. The application will include the confirmation that we have been granted an extension until April of 2022. Upon the application submission and further extension between between the amalgamated municipality and Foothills County will be requested. Next slide, please.
Great. Thank you.